new podcast out with Nick DiBlasi. Nick's got a great story and shares it quite vulnerably. Really went to school, really looking for a stable, well-paying job with a pension, kind of risk adverse. And through the process of some self-discovery and reflection, ends up in the opposite, the world of sales, and then shares his journey through some of the companies he was with, but also where he is today and now in the sales enablement career. But Nick's got some great themes in the podcast that come up. There's mentorship, obviously talked about because we always tend to talk about that on Beers and Careers these days. But also, I feel like Nick's mindset of is one that I'd characterize with the world owes him nothing, and he expects much more out of himself that he does out of his situation. And I think that's a wonderful thought as people get ready for New Year's resolutions and goal planning for 2023. So check out this podcast. I hope you loved it as much as I did. But yeah, I'm going to pour this while we do it.
Perfect.
Mr. Nick DiBlasi, thanks for coming on Beers and Careers, my man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I know I twisted your arm and talked you into a bourbon today, but
Yeah.
I should talk into the mic. What is your favorite cocktail?
My favorite cocktail as of late is what's called a Naked and Famous.
Oh, never heard of it.
It's mezcal, equal parts mezcal,
Okay.
Aperol, chartreuse, and lime juice, shaken and then poured over a single cube like this.
Now, what is chartreuse?
Chartreuse is a flower liqueur, basically made from a bunch of different flowers.
Flower liqueur.
Or
Okay.
herbal liqueur,
Okay.
I believe. That's made from a bunch of different flowers. But the funny thing is that I had it one night when I was out in Boston, and I was trying something new because I love tequila.
Yes.
And I like smoky tequila.
Okay.
And so one of the bartenders was like, "Hey, you got to try this drink. I'm going to make you something new." Great. He sends it over. I'm like, "What is this?" He goes, "It's called a Naked and Famous." I go, "You kidding me?" I go, "This is a real drink?" He's like, "It absolutely
Right.
is a real drink." And so now it's kind of my go-to, that or a dirty martini.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Do you have a preference on vodka? Are you like
Kettle One usually.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm a
which
kettle,
is
a little extra dirty.
a little extra dirty.
Blue cheese stuffed olive.
Yeah, I don't opt for the blue cheese,
Okay.
but I like traditional, I think,
Yeah.
in that manner. But yeah, these are things I just started drinking recently, which is
Oh,
so
cool.
because I was
Yeah.
a vodka guy for a while.
For a while.
when I could drink legally.
Yes. And now
but
into
now-
the tequila. Well, hey.
Cheers.
And Elijah Craig on a Wednesday here. Thanks for coming on. Now, real quick, will you introduce yourself and your current job, and then we'll go back to some rapid fires and rewind a little.
Perfect.
You currently today, your role at ServiceNow is?
It's the senior manager for digital go-to-market enablement. Specifically, I actually support what's called the career progression programs. So my sole job is to help our folks internally get promoted to the next role.
Mm-hmm. And you've been at ServiceNow for about over 8 years.
Coming up on 8.
Coming up
February
on
will
8
be
years. And Nick and I had the fantastic opportunity. We met on a golf course, which kicked ass. Won a tournament. I believe you may have had a low round of the year.
It was low, yeah. I think
Low
it was
round of the year.
73.
Yeah, that was a good round.
Just trying to keep up with you.
Hey, but regardless, what a great place to meet someone. We both have a shared passion for golf. But what was cool was I think you said you went to college for criminal justice.
I did.
And then I was like, dude, I have a podcast. You're going to have to come on because you are not in the criminal justice field anymore. And I think that the whole point of this podcast was sharing people's nonlinear career path. So I can't wait to explore it. And I don't know all of the decisions, which is my favorite other thing, as I try not to talk a whole lot about it before we get on this. So let's get into it. But before we move forward, a couple more things to let people know who you are. Are you into quotes?
I have a couple, yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's some that I definitely tend to look at more than others.
What can you share any?
Yeah, one that I have is tough times don't last, tough people do. That was something, and I forget who quoted that, but I know where it came from when I heard it, which was my AAU basketball coach.
Okay.
Mr. Malillo was his name, so if he's ever listening to a podcast, I hope he sees this, but he drove the passion and the excellence, and he always reminded us when we were in a tough situation, a tough time, that, this doesn't last long, but if you're a tough person, you're resilient, you can get through it.
Love that.
That's something I've always kind of leaned on. And then the other one was a Vince Lombardi quote, which is basically successful people aren't successful because of their strength or their skill set or their knowledge, but because of the will to learn. And I think lacking in will is something that I see a lot actually where I work.
Yes.
And that's just the difference between people who are successful and who aren't. People that want to put the work in, that are willing to go the extra mile, are the ones who become more successful.
It's so funny. This morning, I was reading a sales blog that I follow, and the person that puts out this blog also puts out a tool for assessing salespeople, and the difference between the top 10% and the bottom 10% in the commitment category, which I think when I heard will, I thought of commitment. The difference was 625%.
Wow.
The top 10% has 625% more commitment in their skill set, like when you assess them objectively, which I thought was makes a lot of sense. It's like you can do things, but you gotta pull through. I love those quotes. Do you have a favorite curse word?
I do. Can I say it?
Oh, you can say whatever you want on this thing.
I mean, it's traditional one. It's fuck.
It's the F-bomb. It's amazing.
The F-bomb.
So that was, I got to get data on that because we've asked a lot of people. It's got to be over 85%. And first job?
First job was post-college or just first job working, making money?
First job making money.
I worked for my uncle's liquor store. I was in the redemption room moving broken glass.
No, how old?
14.
Love that.
Yeah, he was super. I thank him because he gave me and let me make money for that whole summer. And I don't know if I was the best worker, but I was family. So
yeah, it's a good. Hey,
I did my best.
We all got to learn somewhere. We all got to learn somewhere. And one more. Favorite book?
Favorite book. I think for me, my favorite book would be The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark Manson.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was something I read not too long ago, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago. I reread it twice, but I just think I love what that story and what that book represents. I think it's something that I try to remind myself of
Constantly. It's funny. You're not the first person that's told me to read it. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read it. You know, and if I buy another book and put it on my bookshelf at home, I think my wife is gonna have a conniption. She's like, when do you have time to read all these books? I was like, well, you need goals. But I will add that to the list. I will add it to the list. So growing up, did you always want to get into criminal justice? Like, were you trying to be a police officer, detective? What was the inspiration for that?
My father had a very successful career, but his was also, I think, one that he didn't really think that he would have stayed in for as long as he did. And so he had a really successful job, and he had gotten a pension. And I think it was really nice to see the type of lifestyle he was living before I was going to college, because he's like, if you have a pension and you have something that you can fall back on, that's great for you and for your longevity. Stability, yeah. And so for me...
Was he a teacher?
He wasn't. He actually worked for Verizon.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, when pensions were a thing.
Yeah, and for 32 years, he dedicated his life and his time to that. And, he was a great role model for someone who was loyal to a company for a very long time. For me, government work was something that I was interested in and thought that, okay, if I can get a pension working for the government, I'm great with people, I think. I want to, I'm okay with building relationships. So police work is something that is part of the criminal justice, but I wanted to work for the government. I wanted to work for DEA, Secret Service, kick down people's doors.
Yeah.
That was like what I thought I wanted to do and was going to be doing.
Okay, and so when did you end up with your degree in that?
I graduated in 2013.
Okay.
And so I went to Westfield, actually, my first year, and then I transitioned from Westfield over to Worcester State, which modeled their criminal law program at the time after Westfield, who modeled theirs after John Jay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What? When did you realize, I don't want to do this?
When I graduated. I got a job working at EMC, actually, with the security company that they hired.
Yes.
So it was called Securitas.
Yes.
And that was a great first gig for me. I think I was making not a lot of money, but I loved getting paid every week, which was nice. They paid weekly. And I just remember watching executives come through this door. I was at 176, which was
South Street.
Yep. Which is, in Hopkinton.
Right down the road from my house. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a lot of I don't want to say the word important, but there's a lot of people that had a really great run at EMC that came through that door. And I got to meet a lot of interesting people who worked at 176. And then I got to understand that, hey, there's more to this life than trying to go for the government and trying to work for this job that I keep getting stalled on. Because at the time, they were preferential to vets coming out of the war, and I was so supportive of that. It's kind of the catch-22. Either you have experience and no degree, or you have a degree but you need experience.
Right.
So I stayed with it for as long as I could until I realized that, hey, I think I'm going to try and jump into the business world.
Very cool. So you were really chasing stability.
Yeah, I think, growing up the way that I saw my family, and I come from, a divorced family, quite candidly, I think, my father had a really great representation of something I wanted to chase. And, you're kind of, I think that you try to emulate or model some people that you look up to. And my mother's a fantastic woman, and she did a lot for us. But, I saw the lifestyle my father was living, and I said, hey, I want to, chase that to a degree. And whatever allows me to get there is hopefully something that I want to pursue and have passion about.
It's amazing how through doing this, 60 whatever plus episodes in now, it's amazing. And I shouldn't say it's amazing, but I am still amazed at how often the role of parents come up in like the way in which you started, but then also the changes along the way too. Because I'm sure it sounds like you're still pretty tight with your family, and then you were like, by the way, guys, this whole thing I went to school for, I'm taking a right-hand turn. Yeah,
and I think the beautiful thing that I loved about the way my parents sent, both my parents didn't finish college. Mm-hmm. My mom went, and then she stopped. I think she might have gotten her associate's degree. My father was going to school, but then he transitioned out. And me and my brother were the first ones to graduate in our family, and they told me that if I'm going to go to school, I'm responsible for my own loans, which in hindsight, I'm glad I went to a state school.
Yes.
Because the loans at the time weren't that bad, but even paying back X amount of dollars every month is something you have to learn to be responsible for. And whether I got a job in that area or not, I was still, regardless at the end of the day, responsible for paying off that bill. And I think it's a great lesson to be learned if you're going to go do something, and you really got to think twice about it. But being 18, I wanted to play college sports. I played college basketball, and so that was at the time my big focus.
Yes, I bet you don't regret any of that, chasing that.
I do not.
Right? Do you find that both of your quotes in the beginning were very? I mean, as a former college athlete, has been myself. They both resonated like to the athlete in me. Have you leaned a lot on your athletic experience as your career's gone on?
100%.
Yeah.
I think being involved in sports at an early age and seeing success at an early age was something I'm super grateful for. The linearity between sports and the work I'm in, it couldn't be more of an equal when I see people coming out of work and into that. Like people who have played sports, and I don't mean to harp on just the sports thing, because I know there's a lot of other things outside of sports, but there is such a parallel when it comes to those things: teamwork, individual contributions, responsibility, hard work, grit, drive. Those are all things that I was taught at an early age, and I think have really benefited me now, which I'm super fortunate for.
That's very cool. And I do want to get into where you went after the EMC stint, but did you play multiple sports growing up, or were you just basketball?
I did. I played, I started off playing baseball.
Okay.
Went to Cooperstown as a kid.
Oh, cool.
Played in Cooperstown, represented Hudson, Mass.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
Very cool.
And then we didn't do so well, but that's okay. We made a good effort.
I bet you still remember it.
100%.
How old do you think you were? 12?
I was 12.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep. I met people from all over the world. We stayed in the barracks. We met a bunch of great people. We traded pins, hats I have pins on my hat from all over the world. And I think at an early age, you want to be the best. And it's so funny watching people now when I go back, and I used to coach second, third, fourth grade, fifth grade basketball.
Okay.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'll tell you more about that later. But baseball. Then I fell in love with basketball when I was in middle school, and then I played a little bit of golf.
Oh, no way.
In high school.
Very cool.
I wasn't that good.
Yeah, it's hard to pick up late, right?
But it kept me busy before basketball. My parents wanted me to be a two-sport athlete, so
it
was important.
It's interesting. I asked because I have younger boys and first and third grade. And it's crazy how, I think we're about the same age. I'm a little older than you. But it's crazy how hard it is for kids to play multiple sports. And it makes me a little sad, knowing that no one's going to the show and anything they're playing, basically. You know, for the most part, the whole point of playing youth sports is like becoming a contributing member of society. And it's like, man, we get these kids like locked in when in bouncing from sport to sport. You kind of got to relearn the team building. We're all in this together kind of thing. So that's what I find. I find that people that played sports in about our generation, that millennial generation, we were still kind of the last of the Mohicans that played multiple. But I digress. So you're at EMC, and then you went you went to sales.
I took a job at a company, so
I know them too. I know all of these companies, which is the best. But.
Yeah, so I had a friend who knew someone who was in recruiting, and they said, "Hey, I think you're a good candidate."
Those recruiters, dude.
Yeah, they're tough. No, I actually I'm thankful for those people because honestly, it's a hard job to begin with, but this particular person helped me land a job with a company in Waltham.
Yes,
it was a GPS tracking company.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I'm not going to say the names because I feel like I only stayed there for 6 months. But
okay.
My job was to help schedule and complete the sale of the GPS tracking for the fleets on all places in the United States. So domestic of the United States and even in some places in Canada and Mexico.
Okay.
Stressful job.
Cool.
Over the weekend. Because we had to make sure that, the sale went through, you're scheduling GPS trackings to be installed into multiple fleets of cars or trucks, and then you schedule these people to drive out, install the GPS, and then you come back on Monday and you're like, okay, great. Out of the 50 that I scheduled, all 50 should be completed, except not how it works. Some of the GPSs are broken, some don't work right. You got your director asking you why these didn't get completed. They have a quota to meet. Sales people are upset. It was a little bit of an interesting ride for me at that moment.
Okay.
But I was happy because I was in something different that allowed me to progress myself, but also I was making a little bit more money than I was sitting at 176.
Yeah. And you were starting to get a really wide scope of business. Like you were getting, right, from post sale, but you saw the sales, you had to interact with the salespeople all the way through the fulfillment, which is like
the pressure.
Yeah,
I think is something that makes or breaks a lot of people.
Yeah,
I think early on, that being my first job out of college in that state, working in that business, wasn't built for me right away, but that wasn't going to stop me from doing something different. That was going to allow me to get better at whatever it was that was meant for me at the time.
So you're doing that in Waltham, and then how do you track to end up at ServiceNow? Like, what's filling that gap?
Yeah, so I leave that tracking company. So in full disclosure, I got hired at a specific company, and there was a merger that was happening before the GPS tracking company. I worked for the alternative company that was merging.
Okay.
Which, I didn't know at the time, unfortunately, which is okay.
Yeah, it's part of the
gig because it was happening regardless. Yeah. But it was a way different business at that time. So that kind of made me feel a little uneasy. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go look for a different gig. And so I got into I worked for a company called Boston Heart Diagnostics.
Yep.
And they are a blood testing company that helps people understand their charting. And they do a little bit more of a comprehensive panel than most doctors at the time did to understand your heart health. And I was big into fitness at the time anyways. I was like, okay, this is great. I'm interested in people getting healthy. So my job was to make sure that all the reporting and all the people that got their blood work done, I worked closely with different medical organizations to make sure that these were fulfilled, they were tracked right, they were categorized correctly so that their patients could get the right and accurate results.
Okay.
It's It was an interesting job for me because it was kind of like customer success meets customer service meets closing out the sale.
Yeah, like almost project management.
A little bit in that manner, but more of just like, hey, you're responsible for the Northeast. You have to make sure that these people and these medical blood draw organizations have completed and done everything correctly and that these people can get their results. And so I had patients calling me directly, but also I had organizations. I had to call organizations to make sure that everything was completed. Yeah. I had a great manager at the time. She was awesome. Her name was Tammy. Tammy, if you're listening to this, shout out to Tammy. She really taught me a lot about business and interacting with people and how relationships matter. no matter what your job is. Because if you're working in a role where people are calling you for something that's not always the best thing, they expect you still to care. And I think that is when I had maybe the turning point about like, okay, maybe sales is fun, because I worked a lot with the sales reps too at the heart diagnostics company.
So you felt like that was like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a seminal moment of like going from transactional to like, okay, this is like, I can play a longer game.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think at the time,
That's cool.
People said to me like, hey, you seem like you're good with people. Why not do sales? And I think there was a bit of self-doubt for me, because that is a big step for someone who's never done it, right? Like anything that feels new, it's uncomfortable in the beginning, and then you get settled and you're like, wow, like I should have never doubted myself.
And it's got a weird, sales has a weird moniker around it, right? It's the used car salesman. There's like a stereotype of it in general. So that motivated you to flip and get into biz dev?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was, making X amount of dollars at the client services company pretty much with Boston Hard. I said, okay, my buddy, one of my good friends was like, hey, I'm moving into sales. I'm going to go work for this tech company. They're right in Marlboro. It's so funny
right down the road.
Right down the street.
Yes.
Yeah. So I said, all right. And he's like, why don't you throw a resume in, see what happens? I put my resume in, get a phone call from the hiring manager. I'm looking at a LinkedIn. I'm like, barely know what LinkedIn is, right?
Totally different world.
Yep. And then I have to do an interview. I passed the phone screen, and then I had to do a role play to see if I'm qualified.
That's fun.
Which is awkward, right?
That's
and fun at the same time. But I nailed the role play, got hired. That's when my career in tech kind of started, and that's, I think, I learned so much at that first job.
Were you working out here? Were you like in the office out here in Marlboro?
Yeah, I was living in Hudson. I was at
You were still in Hudson.
I was
Okay,
at my
cool.
mom's.
All
Thank
right.
goodness she kept me in the house for a little bit.
Yeah, right.
Right. She taught me a nice lesson. I was still paying a little bit of rent, which was good, just to get into the motion of it. And I had a 10-minute commute. It was awesome.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. I just laughed because when you were there, I was working in that building over here, which people could see if they're watching the video of this, and then also near the rink. So we definitely crossed paths.
We must have.
Like we would have walked by each other. So
We could have walked into any of the buildings over here.
Exactly.
So funny.
So it's such a small world. So how was your first gig in sales? And what was your number one lesson from that Unidesk experience?
I think if my number one lesson is anything you're going to get involved with, I think this is where I realized making money sounded great, but unless you didn't care about the product, it wasn't going to be a great journey.
Oh, cool.
And I say that because, to be honest, I chased the coin for a minute.
Yeah,
because
that's why you took that job.
I never had it. Yeah, so I think I always wanted to make sure I think what success at the time looked like for me was having enormous amounts of money.
Yes.
Being able to buy the things you want,
Yes.
using it as a vehicle to continue to move forward. And so for me, I said, okay, if I can do this job successfully, then I'll be good at it. The problem was that I had to learn a technology that I had zero interest in. And it just provided a paycheck for me. However, my drive and will that I learned from sports was what was progressing me in that area. We had to make, I think, something like 100 phone calls a day. We had to hit a quota of like 28 opportunities a month. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
But I learned a ton from my manager, from the VP of worldwide sales sat right behind me. He was hearing every call I made. I mean, it's uncomfortable.
It is so uncomfortable.
But it's, I think you learn a lot when that happens to you. Like being uncomfortable and getting comfortable being that way really helps, I think, people move in a different direction.
Also, in an office environment, it's very interesting. I like hearing you share that story, like gives me flashbacks to when I first started doing it. And it's like, it's one thing to be, when you're going through the job search process as like a college kid and you're like making calls from like your living room that you grew up in and no one's around. You're like, I hope I didn't sound like an idiot. And now you're doing that for a living in front of other people. I remember like the angst that comes with that.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable. And I had an open floor plan. It wasn't like I'm in a cubicle. It was like a wide desk with multiple coworkers.
I've been in there, right? There was like the wavy desk or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been toward that facility, yeah.
And they gave us a good environment, and they provided us with like all the things we needed to be successful. But it was a grind. It was getting in at 7:30, leaving at 6:00 at night.
Yeah.
waiting for your coworkers to get up first before you left.
Yes. Don't want to be
Not the first person to leave, and the last person to, again, like, you don't want to be the last person to come into the office.
Yeah.
It was a grind, and I liked it though. I think like that. Looking back on it now, I remember not loving it, but it taught me so much being in that environment and wanting to be the best. That's just how I'm built. I think like I want to never. I always want to give my best effort with whatever I do.
Did you make the move to ServiceNow from there because of the product?
I left because the company got acquired by
right.
a company called Citrix at the time. And unfortunately, I was part of the layoff.
Okay.
So Christmas rolls around and...
Merry Christmas.
Hey, you're not working for us anymore. Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, this really stinks, and that's unfortunate. And so, the first call I make is to my father. He's down in Florida at the time. I fly myself down there with him, and, I get to see him for a bit. But the job search continued, and I got a referral from a friend of mine, and his now wife is working at the company, and I floated my resume over to her. She gave it to a manager. They called me. I had an interview over the weekend. Had one more interview the following week, got a phone call the week after that. And I remember it's like, yeah, it's a good company. They're doing well. It's called ServiceNow. They sell some type of IT service management solution. It seems like it's really making some noise in the market. I'm like, I don't care. Like
right.
Is it a good fit? Does
right.
It seem
I
like
need a job.
Are they hiring people?
Yeah.
And I remember talking to one of the directors at the time, and he's like, yeah, we have a ton of leads. He's like, the problem is we don't have people to keep up with them. I'm like, and coming from Unidesk, it was more of an educational pitch.
Yeah, it was cold calling.
It was cold calling, educating someone first, and then earning the right and the opportunity to speak to someone further. Wow. Complete difference.
Yeah. Oh my God, overnight. Were you impressed, by the way, that you did the interview over the weekend? Did that strike you at the time?
Honestly, I think I just owe it to my network of people in my support system that are willing to help me.
Yes.
Right. I think being honest and open that you need help sometimes is it's a completely different story. But I was okay with saying, and he knew, one of my friends knew what happened to me at Unidesk, and so and it was an unfortunate event. Great for the people who founded it and did it, but yeah, I think for me it was more of just like, hey, I need help.
Yeah,
and I wasn't on LinkedIn like, hey, if you know someone or know somebody. It was more of just like,
well, things have changed too. Now that's the broadcasting move. But you know what I think is an awesome point is. And I'm in the business of recruiting, as you can imagine. If I needed a new job, I would use a recruiter. But when people call me and they ask for advice on new jobs, use your network. 100%. Like that's the best way to find a job by far. It's got qualification in and of itself.
Totally. And I think your network says a lot about, the people who support you and who's involved and, who's willing to help. And, it's a good gut check.
I think also people underestimate their network. They have more of a network than they even realize.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And I think I just remember at that time in my life being like, I haven't made it yet. And I, still don't feel that way to a degree, but I do. And I just was searching for something good. And I just remember being like, yeah, we have plenty of leads. And I'm like, sign me up. I can't wait.
Dude, do you understand the irony though of like chasing the stable job and then now you're in sales, cutting your teeth? It's like, it's kind of hilarious.
Yeah, I think now that I know where I'm at, like if you had asked me 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, and tell me where I'd be currently, I would say you're full of shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this right now. And so, but life takes us in so many different directions. And I think for me, it's like, I'm so fortunate. I feel so grateful to be where I'm at this juncture in my life and being afforded the opportunities of things that I never thought I would have and people I would meet. And I just think, it's many of the same people at the same company that drove the same passion to bring where we're at as an organization today forward and to beyond. It's like we all had the same mindset, it felt like at the time.
That's so cool. So you're now in a sales enablement role, right?
I am.
Essentially.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
And, I don't have a ton of experience with sales enablement just because we don't have that term, so to speak, in our industry as like as its own role. But can you explain what your role is and what you bring to ServiceNow every day, what you're responsible for?
Yeah, so we didn't have any sales enablement at the time when there's sales, and sales enablement's responsibility and role, in my opinion, is to make sure that you understand the product, you understand how this product makes the company go around, how it generates revenue, but also how to build confidence in the people that you hire. Like, how do I articulate this product to someone who's never heard about it before and confidently speak about it so that someone wants to become more interested to buy it, so that it makes everyone's lives easier. And fortunately, the product that we provide makes people's lives easier.
Yeah.
And I get to see it firsthand in so many different ways. However, my sole responsibility is I'm basically a coach.
Yeah.
Which translated from sports.
That's wild, right?
And I coached, again, young kids, and there's so many similarities between coaching because I was in management for a little bit at ServiceNow.
Okay.
And I love the coaching aspect of that.
I didn't mean to skip over that. You were sales management, and then into sales enablement?
Yeah, inside sales manager, and then I rolled into enablement at the time, supporting the East Coast for ServiceNow, and that was our inside sales org. And there was a need for that because we were hiring a ton of people, like nonstop.
Yeah.
The problem was there's a funnel that starts to happen. People want to get promoted, and you got to make sure those people are ready to go. Unfortunately, our management organization, they did a good job when they all tried to do the best. They wore many hats like everyone does at a company.
Yeah. Especially a small growing company. Not small, but a fast growing company. You're wearing so many hats.
Yeah, 2,262 people when I joined at ServiceNow.
Wow.
Versus the 24,000 people I think are there now.
Damn.
Yeah.
So cool.
It's been, again, such a journey. And I think, to your point about
10x.
Wow. I knew nothing what that meant to me at the time. And I never knew where we would go, but, great leadership and driving that ship to a place where, no one knew.
That's very cool.
Big accent.
Very cool. So you're doing the sales name, and I know like today your job is, as you said, coaching. When were you coaching? Second, third, fourth, and fifth graders, I think you.
Yeah.
Like, when were you doing that?
That was in the year of 2015 to probably 2019.
So like at Unidesk at the beginning of your ServiceNow career.
Because I was living in this area.
Yeah.
And so it was so funny because one of the people from Boston Heart called me and said, "Hey, I heard you were a really good basketball player in high school." I said, "I appreciate you saying that. Why do you ask?" He's like, "Well, my son is in the second grade, and he's playing in rec league for Hudson, and I wanted to see if you want to help coach."
Cool.
And I was like, "Of course."
What a cold call. Not
know.
a cold call, but what a call.
I knew of the person in the organization, and he was
Still a cool ask.
Yeah, successful person, a super nice guy. But I had chatted with him prior to, but he had never asked me. And then I think he put two and two together at some point. Called, and I said he didn't know a ton about basketball, but he's really interested in helping his son. Cool. And I said, "Yeah, of course, I would love to come help out." So every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday, I'm in the gym. I get to blow the whistle.
Yep.
I get to watch kids run around in 900 different directions.
Yes.
But again, like watching someone get better was like the best thing for me. It was so fun to watch people see something and a light bulb go off.
Yeah.
And then they say, "Wow, I didn't think I could do that, but now I can."
And they say thank you with their eyes sometimes. I
mean, at times there's a lot of things that are thankless jobs.
Yes.
And it's not even the thank you I think most of us are looking for. It's more of just like knowing that you had a hand in helping someone just get better so that they're living something that they never thought they would have, or be better at something they never thought they would be better at.
Did you find, I'm going to guess that some of your inside sales management time overlapped or was right around that time based on the time dates. What did you take from coaching youth sports into the business world? Was there anything that you were like, damn, I got to be doing this?
Yeah, there's a ton of parallels. I think slowing down and really hearing where people are at and recognizing where people are at, because everyone's on a different journey.
As opposed to assuming where you think they are, you mean?
Yeah, as opposed to like running some regimented routine or game plan.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, well, I recognize that this individual is a really good dribbler. And this person's a really good shooter. And this person is really good at setting screens and picks. Like everyone's got a job, right? It's like the Bill Belichick mentality.
Yes.
Do your job, understand your role, and be good at it, and then put people in positions to succeed. And I think I took the same mentality. I recognized where these kids were at their skill level, and I hopefully put them in a position to lead and to win. And the same way is when I met people where they were at ServiceNow when I was managing inside sellers.
Yeah.
Confidence is low. It's a tough job. You're banging the phones. You want to make a lot of money. You want to.
Yeah, you're chasing the dream. You
Get
know, not everyone's
promoted.
not gonna make it.
Yeah, you're working at the time. No one knew it was going to be a massive company, but you're working for a pretty good company, and everyone's kind of getting paid. And so, yeah, you got to meet people where they're at. And my job is to remove obstacles and watch people get promoted and get better. Like, and it's the same thing with sports. Like, remove obstacles and let someone do what they're capable of doing.
When you made the transition from individual contributor to sales leader, what was the biggest challenge?
Responsibility. I think recognizing that it's now not just about you, it's about everyone else, including you. And you're the representative of all of those people at a different level.
Yeah. But you strike me as a guy who handles responsibility well. Like, do you mean like responsibility in that, or do you mean getting results through others?
I think I think my responsibility was to make sure everyone succeeded.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Like you felt like you needed. Okay. You took it personally when you had people that didn't do well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make everyone better. But I think the irony in that is the quality of the person you hire.
Yeah.
Right. And that is like, your ideal candidate profile or whatever that might be for some folks. Drive is something that you can't really measure in grit and will. But again, using sports as the analogy, there's so many parallels there. Like I saw it in sports, and the people that succeeded the most were the people who said, I hate losing. I'll do whatever it takes to win. And that, if we can all do that as a team and I can individually contribute, well, we're gonna go somewhere. We're actually gonna get somewhere.
It's so interesting you say that. I felt that as well. I felt at times also the hero complex came out where you're like, you wanted to save everyone and you had to learn the tough lesson that like, nope, some people just aren't good fits for the job. I struggle with that. Did you struggle with that at all? You wanted it more than them at times?
Yeah, because I think I saw the opportunity that I wasn't afforded right away.
Yeah.
And we're hiring people maybe out of college or some people that like came from something other than, what was technology. And I was starting to realize at this time like how great our company was and the opportunity of like the grass isn't always greener on the other side just because you're not putting forth your best effort. What I also learned was how to have really difficult conversations. That in itself,
really good.
Managing people, kind of being like a part-time therapist.
Sometimes full-time?
At times, yeah, it definitely was. And I think I learned a lot about having difficult conversations, not only at work, even it helped me translate into my personal life, giving feedback and constructive criticism. And, how would I want to receive it if I was in that position, right? Like thinking about yourself first a little bit, but also like how that translates to others, and everyone has a different learning ability. So, and not everyone's built the same way you are. So understanding that is different.
Right. That's really cool to hear because I do think that oftentimes we get obsessed with what the job or the career is going to do for us financially, and like so many of the benefits are actually what it does for your personal development, professional, but also your personal development. I feel the same. One of my favorite podcasters is Rogan, obviously. Maybe not obviously, but you know me, so probably obviously. And there's one thing he always says where he's like, man, we're designed to just go rot in cubicles all day. Like that sucks. And I always sit there and I go, oh man, I wish he knew that like sales is sport in the business world. And that like, oh my God, you're not sitting in the cubicle rotting all day. You are just sharpening your skill set every single day.
Yeah, it might not be physically draining.
Exactly.
Mentally, though, coming in and knowing that, hey, I have to call people that are going to probably tell me no if they pick up 9 times out of 10.
Or to F myself daily.
Yeah, like you're just trying, you're just, the same person on the same hamster wheel.
Yes.
Calling the same people, trying to make a difference for a company that you have no idea what sells yet.
100%. It's such a grind. Although what I'd love to ask you too, because I know you are still a big fitness guy. We talked about that a little bit. Like, how have you The same way that like coaching youth sports, I'm guessing you shared had the effect on the business world. How does like your what you do outside of work, fitness related, have parallels to what you do today? Or do you draw from any of that in what you do today? Is what I actually want to ask.
Yeah, I think if you were to talk to my company, everyone knows I'm like the golf guy.
Yeah.
Which is so funny because
Love that.
after college, I wasn't going to play professional basketball, unfortunately, and I had to understand that my life was going to take a different direction, and I had to find a real job. But I wanted to pursue sports still. I'm in a men's basketball league. I try to stay active that way. I love going to my gym. I take up boxing, but I love golf. Golf is something that allows me to still compete at a high level because there are tournaments, and Mass Ams and things that I still want to pursue in my career that allow me to be at a level that I still feel like is high.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
no matter
And
what
competitive.
Yeah, exactly. No matter what I do, I don't ever want to forfeit the competitiveness. I think that is something that is lost in it's lost in translation at a lot of different places in this world.
Yeah.
But being competitive, I think, makes the world go round. And being competitive in sales and in sports, you really get to see people shine. And then you also get to see people's character when they don't. And that tells a lot. On the golf course, if you see me break down and I'm upset and I throw my club 95 yards to the right, well, maybe that person doesn't handle rejection so well.
Right.
Versus someone who chunks the ball 5 yards in front of them, gets back up to the ball again and chips it in the hole for an eagle.
Laughs it off, right.
And they're like, see, that's how life goes.
So through golf more than like through other fitness endeavors, you feel like that's where you draw on more of your parallels today.
Yeah, 100%. Because
Cool.
I think
You're just saying that because I love golf.
No, I'm so glad that you love to compete in golf. I think but the day you invited me to come play golf in that tournament with you, right? I had a couple different thoughts. I was like, okay, I know you're handicapped. I'm like, all right, I hope I can show up for you and for the team, right?
Yes.
It's like almost like a first impression.
It is.
How do I show up and contribute and add value so that I'm not someone who's just, riding off the coattails of Mark and Brennan and, and I didn't want that to be something. So I wanted to make sure that my competitive nature showed up in a healthy way to add value to our group. And I hopefully did that. And I think, the outcome is that it's either you win or you lose.
Right.
And I didn't want to not ever forfeit the opportunity to win from the start.
Right. I love that. And half of it was preparation, right? Like when I hear about that, I hear about the mindset and like how you do, I haven't said this in a while, but the quote of how you do anything is how you do everything. Which is such a good one. It's like such a meaning. Golf could have been such a joke that day. And it kind of, it could have easily been, right? It could have just been a couple guys effing around. But I do approach stuff 99% of the time the exact same way.
Yeah.
Even coaching my kids' hockey practice, I'm like, well, there's a practice plan.
But there's
40 kids relying on me. I can go wing it or I can give it my best.
100%. And there's, and in this world, there's winners and there's people who lose. And I think, that's what makes it so eventful and fun is to feel that winning. And I think you also learn a ton from losing.
Yes.
The same way at being a sales enablement coach, I hammer people all the time on like role plays and I make sure it's challenging and difficult because failing forward in an environment that allows you to do so will create consistency and confidence to nail the meeting or opportunity when the opportunity arises.
Yes.
Same thing with sports when you're practicing and when you're ready to know that you're going to duff the ball at some point today.
Yeah.
But it's okay because I know that I drive the ball 300 yards straight.
Yeah.
And I'll figure it out
later. Yeah. The iteration piece is it's actually a word I've been pondering kind of recently is like, it's one thing to fail and just kind of try again. It's another thing to be like, when I'm trying again, how am I doing? Like, am I trying it the same way? And if I am, like, am I really trying? Right? And it's so small and like minute, but like I'm guessing when you're coaching in a role play and you're making it challenging and you're talking about people failing forward, I know from human nature, you have reps that are trying and giving it their all. But then you have the reps that's trying it and giving their all, but they're constantly trying things in a different way, just nuanced and better, and they're pushing themselves more than you could really push them. You can foster the opportunity, but they're iterating.
100%. Yeah.
It's like, It's so funny because like you saying that made it go off for me again, but it's what I've been looking for, like the last couple months. Like I've been coaching people. It's like, oh yeah, man, like I can help you. Certainly try again and fail forward, but like, are you trying to do it a little differently, or are you just trying to hope that the process takes care of you?
Yeah, and candidly, I think, when we are in a place where we're at now at ServiceNow, we are making sure that we're hiring people who are driven and we say the word 9s and 10s because our CEO wants 9s and 10s working for the organization, and as he should. And the people that I see excel are the people who are willing to just have that grit, the grind, the will to want to be better. They take constructive criticism. They work with it. They're not offended.
Yeah.
They just say, okay, someone who's been here before me knows a little bit of the lay of the land, and that person might not be the end-all, be-all, but I'm going to go find other people.
Right.
And I'm going to ask for that constructive criticism. I'm going to want to make myself the best candidate I can so that not only can I succeed, ServiceNow is going to succeed. And
Yeah.
we're all going to succeed together because, when the tide rises, the boats come with it.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. What, when you were driving here today on the podcast, thinking about your career or our relationship, was there anything you were like, man, I hope we talk about this topic?
I think the one thing I want to get across just doing this podcast is how important I think having drive is, and not, it's not a pun because I was, I'm driving on the way there.
I know.
It's
right?
just like, the irony. But I think, when I think back about what success looks like and how it looks for others and how maybe people determine it, I think, it's easy because I sit in a box in my industry that I knew nothing about years ago.
Yeah.
Like a shot in the dark, complete left field for me, super uncomfortable in the beginning. And then to be where I'm at now, I think one thing besides having the drive is also being willing to take the step to do something that's really uncomfortable in the beginning. I've been put in a few uncomfortable positions as of late. One of those being speaking at a conference and having imposter syndrome.
Yes.
I remember saying to myself, am I really fit for this?
Yeah.
Like am I just fooling myself? And, but I did it. I enjoyed it. I was uncomfortable. I'm the toughest critic on myself. I know that for sure. I hate the way I introduced myself. I pick myself apart.
And no one else noticed, but you're just grinding yourself to pieces. I get it.
Yeah, and I think, and again, candidly, this is an area for me that's a first. And I think, but having the opportunity and someone else believing in me, whether it was you and Brendan saying, I think this guy would be great on the podcast or whatever, like that self-doubt comes and creeps in a little bit.
It does.
But redirecting that to opportunity is life-changing. Because if I didn't take that opportunity when I doubted myself about coming over to ServiceNow, not a shot I'd be here.
Yeah. It's an interesting dichotomy though, because like getting to know you as you're a humble guy, like a humble, grateful guy. And you've referenced to me before, like great managers, great mentors along the way. And we don't get there without great leaders and mentors and managers. It's impossible. But at the same time, it's funny. I went through an experience here where a longtime mentor left. And I was like, fuck, like this is like a real fork in the road decision. And I remember another person who I think really highly of here was like reflecting on your success. Like, where did that come from? And I was like, giving them a lot of street credit. And he goes like, but Mark, who read the books? Who did the work? He's like, you're always in control of your own career. And it's just like this weird dichotomy where when I think of drive, I often go, I guess I have a lot of drive, but I don't think of myself that way because you're always trying to just suck information from other people. But in reality, you are in control of 100% of your own destiny. It's a very weird. I don't even know if I'm articulating myself particularly well, but it's a juxtaposition in my own like gut.
Yeah, and I think the point about leadership is so important. Like, who was there before me?
Yes.
Who believed in me? I've been fortunate, again, for as long as I've been at ServiceNow, we have some really great leadership. There are I could name 10 people off of my hand right now that I think are responsible for my success at ServiceNow.
Yeah.
And some of them I'm still really close with today at the organization. Some have left the organization and I'm still close with. But it's the, looking inward and understanding how you can get better and then asking and soliciting for that feedback. I did that today. I had a quarterly growth conversation today with my boss.
Yeah.
And one of the first questions I asked him was, hey, what can I be doing better to help drive our company's mission and what we're looking to be better at? Like, how can I be better? And, and he always knows that I'm that type of person, but I think rarely people, will want to ask that because it's always about like,
It's very vulnerable.
yeah, and some people don't want to hear it. And I want it. I want to hear it because the more I cover, the more I can complete, the more well-rounded I'll become. And I'm hearing it from multiple people. And it's like, okay, great. Well, now I can make myself a better candidate, a better employee, a better person at home maybe, right? Yeah.
When I hear you say that, I hear you saying, I put myself purposely outside of my comfort zone because I know that it's where it's going to help.
I try to. I think that's something I really, at this phase of my career, I look at it and I don't know why, but it's like a 30-year career type thing. But it's like the first 10 years are learning for me. Yeah. The second 10 hopefully will be where I can give back. Yes. And the last 10 will be somewhere where I can hopefully see, success, but also give back and learn who I am as an employer, as a worker, and then really believe in myself. Yeah. I like that. I like that.
For me, it makes sense. I don't know why 30 years. I mean, hopefully it's less. I hopefully hit a break, but
right. Although sometimes nowadays I'm like, I don't know. Like I see my dad and mom retired, and they're happy doing their thing, and I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. Yeah. Like I'm gonna need to do something with my brain other than golf. Yeah, it's so funny because being in enablement has allowed me to feel like I work and I make a difference, and I'm very, again, I get a lot of different opportunities, but it doesn't feel like work all the time.
Yeah. It's fun.
It's different.
It's fun.
Every day is different with people. You get to interact with people. You get to see people get better. You get to be involved with leadership, at least at my level. Mm-hmm. And it's fun. And you get to see it you get to see success like come in so many different ways. And I've met so many great people like along this journey that I would have never met.
Yeah. I mean, success at this point in my life is like enjoying Monday. Like if you enjoy Monday and you can't wait to go home, like I got a good family, so that part I'm very fortunate about. But if you also look forward to going to work, like that kind of kicks ass.
It's a very Gary V comment.
It is a very Gary V comment. You're right, and I will admit, Gary V and I share the same birthday actually. But I am a big Gary V fan. What advice though, I've always thought this podcast would be great for people during career transitions, but also specifically like high school, college age folks thinking about what they want to do. Like, what advice would you give to the recent college grad, to the recent high school grad thinking about trying to earn some cash and make it in the real world?
I think the first thing I want to say is like, I'd say believe in yourself as someone who doesn't, although you don't know anything maybe in the business world, quote unquote, I think you taking that first step says a lot about you. And I think being someone who's accepting of constructive criticism and who can be humble when it may be tough to be humble says a lot. I think if you want to be someone who wants to be successful in this world, then it starts with yourself. And I think you have to be willing to take that step, and you just never know where the career is going to take you. But if you don't, it's like the Michael Jordan quote. Yeah. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah. And I think you have to take the shot even when it's really uncomfortable. So I would say, knowing myself when I graduated college, all I wanted to do was find a job. And some people have really great schools that allow people to transition that. Same. I unfortunately didn't. Same. But if you're able to do that and you're willing to put yourself out there and receive criticism and get better through trial and error, then I think you're going to be really successful because that just tells a lot about your character and what you're willing to go through.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice because not only are you talking about believing in yourself, but you're talking about, hey, figure out who you are. Like figure out who
try.
You are. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the same person I was when I was
100%.
20 years old.
100%.
Totally different now. But, at the time, I like to think I believed in myself to a degree. Yeah. And some other people saw what maybe I didn't see in me. But at least I put myself in a position, a lens for others to view me differently.
Yeah. And which is why you're having fun now because you're giving that back.
I love it. I think if I can continue to make this world a better place with people, whether it's on a small level or a larger level, then
you're doing it.
I'm super happy. Yeah. Like I said, I always chased the money, I think, early on. And now when I'm in a place where I see success happening for others.
Yeah. And I think it's fine to chase money early on because you need it. And B, that's how you kind of figure out who you are to a degree too. Like once you start making money, you go, well, this is getting old. How do I also do more? You know, there's a at my favorite little breakfast spot in town, there's a Pablo Picasso quote on the wall that I always make my kids look at. I'm like, it says the purpose of life is figuring out your gift, and the meaning of life is giving it away.
Yeah, I would echo that.
Right?
I think,
It's like,
yeah.
whoa. When you were saying that, that's all I could think of. Is like Nick is saying this. You know?
Well, the money, right? Like I mentioned earlier on, was great, but it's a byproduct of when you do something you actually enjoy doing. That stuff follows. I believe in that. I think it's something, and that's something I didn't believe in.
Yes.
Until I got to a place where, oh wow, like I really like what I'm doing. I'm making a difference. I hope the company values that, and so far so good.
Yeah, love it.
And,
Well, I can tell you're an awesome coach.
I try to be.
And you're having fun, which is half the battle of coaching. So, dude, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. This has been great. It's my first podcast. So we couldn't ask for a better host.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and this will be released shortly, and we'll have to do it again and get an update sometime.
Yeah, maybe on the golf course.
I love it, Nick. Pleasure, man.
Mark,
thank
thanks.
you so much.
Appreciate it.